And what's up, guys? I'm going to do another video today on tips and tricks part two. Hopefully, I can get you guys to pick up a couple little things from it, and we'll see what you can learn. All right. And if you have any questions afterwards, just put them in the comments below, and I always try to get back to you. So um, we're going to start out on the same type of deal that I was on the last one. This time, I've moved out a little bit further to a rock edge now. So from those pads out, there's a little. It's a couple rock piles. They're about 10 foot long by 5 foot, and it's early in the morning, so I'm just gonna work those shallower ones first, in the 5 to 10 foot zone. And you can see they're not too far off those pads, but they are not in the pads. So just kind of pay attention to that. And all I did was I was just idling around until I found, that the kind of bottom that I'm looking for, which is just isolated rock piles. And once I caught this first one off of them, then I knew that's all I had to go around and look for and see which ones were holding fish, which ones weren't. That one was a shallow rock pile. So the major part of this though is that the main river channel does still butt up close to this. It's kind of behind me and then cuts to the left, right in front of the boat. So that one was right on the edge on that rock pile. Same thing. I kind of moved up just a little bit further. There was another rock pile that I found up a little bit, still on that creek channel edge. This one was a little bit deeper. As the sun came up, I just kind of moved out from those rock piles that were in 5 to 10 and then moved out to them that were in like 8 to 12 or 8 to 13, and kind of spent majority of the time on that area. That channel right there is crucial. It's kind of got a steep ledge right next to it that kind of butts up next to the rock pile. So that rock pile is amazing. I mean, if you can find something like that, that's the kind of areas that they like to hang on. Even though those two were nothing to write home about. I mean, they were, two smaller ones. There are big fish that get up on those a lot. You just got to kind of hit it at the right time of the day. Same deal here, but I moved out just a little bit further. Now I'm in like 12 to 15. So if you can fish them anywhere under that thermocline. If you find one in 2 foot, you can still catch them on them, but you got to kind of find the depth that they're holding on to. Once I caught those smaller ones, I knew those bigger ones weren't going to be far behind, but they were going to be a little bit deeper. I'll try to put something up too that'll show you what these rocks look like on the bottom. I mean, you really can't miss it when you're on soft bottom and then you're cruising and cruising and you see that change on your electronics. That's a key sign that that's hard bottom. That was a lot better fish. Like I said, once I moved out a little further, I kind of keyed in on where the bigger ones were staying, so then I could just cruise around and find those same types of deals. I think the main thing about this spot right here is that main river channel. It's close. I mean, it's right up, butted up against it. It's kind of far out. It's offshore a little bit, but it's not hard to find. That was a good 4 pounder or so. Still in the same area. Stayed there for a little bit fishing that rock pile because it was awesome, man. Right next to that channel, there was plenty of bait. I mean, I was seeing bait everywhere, which anytime you see a lot of bait, that's good. Another good tip on here is when you're fishing jigs a little bit deeper, don't hop the jig. When a crayfish is in like its defensive mode, it doesn't hop. It kind of scoots back 2 or 3 times and then it's crawling on the bottom. So it kind of, once that jig falls, if you have a flat bottom to the jig, the bottom or the plastic that's on the jig will stand up straight, kind of like the claws will on a crayfish when it's defensive. So if you let it sit there for a couple minutes and then drag it, and drag it and drag it, and then you let it sit, those claws are going to stand up. So that's a key thing you want to do. Hopping it just, it'll imitate a bluegill a little bit more, but if they're feeding on crayfish more, then you want to drag it. So you just want to kind of experiment with it. But more times than not, I've always gotten bit dragging it and not hopping it. This one here is a point, the same point that I fish it a lot, but it comes out to a point in about 12 foot. The grass line comes out to 12 foot, and then directly in front of that, there's a hard bottom. It's like hard rock and drops off on both sides. So this one was sitting right on the tip of it. And I kind of fished it for like 20 minutes before I realized which angle I had to hit them at. So make sure when you make a cast, you're paying attention to the angle of which you came across it at. If you get bit on a certain angle, you want to duplicate that angle. There's been times where I would come across different angles and not get bit, and then all of a sudden you come across at that right angle and they just crush it. So you definitely want to pay a big attention to the angle of which you cast it at.
Sweet, another nice one.
Yeah, if you'll notice on this one, I'm back to the same area. This is earlier in the morning. There's the same thing with the main creek channel turning in front of this uh, offshore rock pile. And make sure if you have electronics, you're watching them nonstop, because then you'll find stuff that you never would find if you weren't looking at it. So make sure when you're just cruising along, you're constantly keeping your eyes on that screen. I found a lot of stuff just by looking at the screen. You can notice I'm dragging the jig too and not hopping it. And as soon as I hit that hard piece of cover, then I'll lift it up over it, let it drag across. And that's most of the time when they're going to eat it. And there he is, just lifted up across that rock. Just waiting on the other side for it. That was a good fish too. That one was pushing 5. So, like I said, once you find those areas, then just to duplicate the pattern, you just look for that same depth and follow the creek channel or the main river channel until you find those areas that are on the flats near them, or the edge of the turns in the channels. This one was on a flat on the opposite side of the channel, so I followed it around to the opposite side on the flat, and then this one was actually on wood. I came across it and found a piece of wood that was only about 5 foot long, and so I just stopped to fish it, and there happened to be one on it. So you'll never know unless you see it. You stop and fish it, and then you catch them. And then for future trips that you go out, what kind of stuff that they live on here. So wood, rock, any kind of hard cover that they can relate to is kind of what you want to look for, especially in those depths near the channel with bait. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. It was a good fish too. Same thing, 3.5 pounder, but within that 50-yard stretch right there, I mean, I'd put a limit of fish in a boat within a half hour just fishing the same kind of structure that I saw the first time. So, like I said, pay attention to things. If you catch them on a certain type of bottom and you're seeing what that looks like on your electronics, just kind of follow it around until you see it again. and fish the next one and just keep moving on. You'll eventually learn like the kind of stuff that they're on all the time.
Another good fish, dudes. Another good fish.
All right, now I promised you guys I would take a picture. It's with my phone, so it's not the best quality of the thermocline. And if you can see in 15 foot where that fuzzy line is, it goes all the way across the screen. That's your thermocline. So you want to stay within that thermocline at 15 foot and shallower. Don't go below it. I mean, you'll notice all the bait and everything else and all the activity that you're seeing on your screen is always going to be in that same zone, right around that zone, or just a little bit shallower. And that doesn't mean that they're not going to get up shallower, because a lot, sometimes you will catch them up really shallow. It just means that they're not going to go below that. There's not enough oxygen below that line. So, and in the summertime, what happens is that thermocline slowly drops. That warmer water on top is just slowly sinking, and that's just at the point where it got to. So the hotter it gets and the further in the summer it gets, it's going to keep dropping down lower and lower, until the fall when it starts to come back up. So I hope you guys picked up a couple, little tips from this. And my next one I'm going to do is offshore fishing. I'll do a video on, the kind of things that I look for, and how I approach them, and why I fish them, certain areas and don't fish others. So stay tuned, and I'll keep you guys updated, and hopefully you guys are catching more fish. All right, see you.